Hi, I'm Bill Laveris from IDG, and I'm very happy today to be joined by Paul Gillen, who heads up Paul Gillen Communications. Now, Paul may be familiar to many of you. He has authored several books on social media, including his most recent, Social Marketing to the Business Customer. Paul's been around the IT field for quite a while, started back in the early 1980s with Computer World, where he would later become editor-in-chief, and he is a very frequent speaker at major conferences both in the U.S. and globally. Paul Gillen, welcome today, and thank you very much for being my guest.
Thank you, Bill. Pleasure to be here.
Now, social media has obviously been one of the biggest technological and cultural phenomena over the last few years, no question about it. How does mobility affect the way people adopt and use social media today?
Well, it's changing it completely, Bill. I mean, we've seen that smartphone adoption is well over 50% now among people who own cell phones. So that's approaching saturation. And of course, what people use on their cell phones, in addition on their smartphones, in addition to news and information, is social networking. And social networking is being embedded into nearly everything that people do on their mobile devices these days. I have a navigation app on my smartphone that has a social network built in. I can find out what other drivers on the road, the experiences they're happening. People go they're looking for a restaurant, they can look up what their friends are recommending. The daily activities that we have performed for many years are now accompanied by this ongoing stream of advice from our network, and this all helps us make better decisions, and it keeps us also in touch with people that we would not otherwise see. So it strengthens our relationship, and it makes it all the more important for businesses that they be tied into the social networks their customers are using, so that when their people are on the road, their field force is out there, their field force is constantly delivering to their customers updates and information that can further the good of the company.
Mm-hmm. Let's hope that GPS app you have doesn't let you read the mind of the guy you just cut off.
It does have a messaging feature, but I've never used it. And of course, there's always the issue with using a GPS or using a smartphone while driving a car, which is sort of a downside of this whole technology. But it really is remarkable to see how social networking has become intrinsic to everything we do, from making food choices, to choosing what to read, to what movies to go to making shopping decisions. I mean, we almost should never go into a buying decision now without having information that has been shared to us by other people who are wiser about that decision we're going to make.
Absolutely. No, you touched on business. How will mobility and social media essentially change the way, if at all, change the way companies interact with their customers in the future?
Well, social media is already changing those interactions pretty fundamentally, and it's because the customers become more empowered. Because of the phenomenon I was just talking about, customers now have the ability to consult other customers and experts before they go into the buying process. And this changes the buying equation completely. It means that the company has much less influence, actually, over those decisions than a person's peer network may have. So companies are having to learn to get in on those conversations, to be tapped into them, and to be very responsive to what their customers are expressing, the needs that they're expressing in social channels. It also means that companies have to be much more transparent. You know, in industries where businesses have been able to conceal information, where that gave them a strategic edge, buying an automobile, for example, right? The car salesman always had information that we, the buyer, didn't have. That dynamic has changed completely now, where the seller has very few secrets anymore. And so what does that mean? Well, it means that you have to have a terrific product and a very customer-focused culture, but B, you have to assume that buyers know a lot about the decisions they're making before they come into the process. That means your salespeople have to be more informed. It means your collateral has to be more informed. It means that you need to know a lot more about that customer as well, because they know so much about you. So it really puts the burden, or I think the challenge, to businesses to be very tapped into what their customers need and to be constantly working to deliver on an immediate basis the needs that their customers express.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Anything but business as usual, the way you're describing it, Paul. What are some of the more interesting, let's say, intersections between mobility and social media that you've observed?
Well, I think the ability to tap into to other people's recommendations wherever we are. There's a term in the retail industry that's popped up in the last year called showrooming, which refers to people going to retail stores and looking up the prices and the descriptions of products that they want to buy on their mobile devices. In fact, it can be as simple as scanning a barcode and not only looking up competitive pricing, but also getting customer reviews online while you're standing there in the aisle making a decision. That is going to reshape entire industries. It's already changing the consumer electronics industry. The retail side of it is being devastated by this phenomenon, and I think it's going to affect retail stores of all types. I also think the social selling, or the fact that people's recommendations can influence others to make decisions, is a whole new dynamic in the buying process, where my trusted social friends, my network, can recommend that I buy something that I would never have seen otherwise. And that's actually very good for companies, particularly small companies or companies that can't afford big advertising budgets. Really exceptional products and services now can spread with amazing speed through the enthusiasm of customers, and that puts the onus, I think, on businesses to understand the value of brand ambassadors and to recruit those people. So how does mobility play a role in that? Well, we now have the ability through our camera phones and our video phones to record our experiences immediately and share them with potentially very large audiences. So it means that businesses must be aware of every interaction that's going on with the customer, both good and bad, because it's so easy for customers to capture those interactions now and share them. And anything from a tweet up to a video can be captured and shared on the spot with the mobile device. And for companies, particularly companies that have a physical component to their presence, that puts the onus on them to train their employees to be very, very customer focused and customer centric, so that only good experiences are being shared on those networks.
Terrific information, Paul, and it's just such a different world out there now, due in large measure to mobility and social media. Paul, before we sign off, you're going to let me give you your latest book one more plug. That's Paul Gillen's book, Social Marketing to the Business Customer. Strongly recommend you pick it up. Paul Gillen, thank you very much for joining us here today and sharing those great thoughts with us.
Always a pleasure, Bill. Thank you.
And I'm Bill Laveris from IDG saying thank you for joining us today as well.